way that the zodiac is displayed, the fact that the 12th house is the last house really shows the place where we are ripe to really give everything that we have back to the public. Now, when I talk about Neptune, the 12th house, I include the whole archetype, which means everything related to Neptune, everything related to the 12th house, and everything related to Pisces. So it makes things more difficult because you obviously have some planets in Pisces and something in the 12th house and Neptune somewhere else. So there are many options, many possibilities, and you will see that when you analyze a chart and you will ask what is the person doing for a living, you will see that they will choose one of these options. They're not supposed to integrate the whole thing. I will give example as we go on with the lecture, but it's important to analyze all these dimensions and not just focus on the 12th house and its rulers. So let's start with why is the 12th house related to anything related to vocation. The topic of this talk is the 12th house, the house of your true career. This can be misleading because what is a true career? We're having a career and that's it. It's not necessarily the house in which, you will find your God-sent mission and you will save the planet from its pain and its problems. It's not necessarily something that is larger than life. You can also own a grocery store if you have the moon in the 12th house, for example. So it can be something very simple. It can be something very, everyday life that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with spirituality. It all depends on your level of evolution. Not everybody is tapping in their own spiritual quest, and everybody has a 12th house. So there are many dimensions to that, and for that you will have to assess what is the level of evolution of the person to see on what level they will express these vocational symbols. Now, when I talk about the 12th house, why is it, again, going back to the same question, why is it related to public and to vocation? Because the 12th house, if we relate it to spirituality, is the house where we all come from. It's the womb of God, which means it's the house in which we can associate ourselves with the absolute unity, go beyond our separation, and understand that we are all on the same boat. We all are basically trying to achieve the same things. So it's in the 12th house we basically tap into the collective, conscious and unconscious. And the key word here is collective. So we tap into that energy, into that thread that unifies everything and everyone. And it's also the house in which the ego recognizes not to have absolute control over its existence. And this is following the 11th house, in which the human brain and the human mind achieved its highest potential. Aquarius is the archetype of genius. And genius is basically fulfilling the maximum of your capacity, tapping into that unique talent of yours. So after that, following that, you go to the 12th house and you realize you know nothing. After you thought to have been that genius. It's that thin line between science and spirituality. So, in that 12th house, there is a surrendering. And it's not just surrendering to these higher energies and to this higher consciousness and ideals, but it's also surrendering because you don't have a choice. And because, I mean, think about the fact that every morning, around 9 a.m., every morning when the sun is rising, it is in the 12th house. So it's the house of a new beginning. It's not the house necessarily of endings. And where is everyone in the morning around between 7 and 9, say? In the subway, in traffic, in this public stream. We're leaving our private environment and we go into the motion of life. And we didn't reach our office yet. We didn't reach the 11th house and the 10th house. We are in this public place. And this is basically the nature of the 12th house is what belongs to everyone. It's the earth, it's the air, it's the resources, it's the weather. It's everything that is part of nature, that is part of the divine plan, that is part of everything, but it's everything that we were born into and we didn't necessarily participate in building it. We were born into existence, and existence was set up to receive us and to support life. So the 12th house relate to that collective tone, to that collective atmosphere, which can, like I said in the beginning, we can name this the womb of God, and we can name these public toilets. It's where everybody goes to do their thing. It's not name, it's not individual. The basic thing about the 12th house is it's impersonal. You don't own anything in the 12th house. It's not yours. So it's everything that everyone has free access to. And this is why through our 12th house quality we don't only go to the army and meet Mr. John from the other side of the country. We're not just in that melting soup, that melting pot, and mixing with strangers which happen to be children of God as well. But we are also able to participate in the collective. We are also able to touch, to move the collective through the 12th house. To basically, the most important thing about the 12th house is to raise public identification. Through our 12th house qualities, Mr. John from the other side of the country and someone living in Africa and someone living wherever can find a common ground with you, can find something that resonates because it taps into that collective nature. If you have on the other way around, if you have many planets in your 4th house, you will be very personal. You will talk to Kim Marie, your dear friend. She will be part of your private environment. But when you go to the 12th house, you talk to a public audience. You don't know them personally, but they are your friends, but impersonal friends. You don't own them, and they don't own you. So through that Neptune, wherever it's located, and we all have a 12th house, we all have Neptune somewhere, so we all have access to that energy. And like I said, on the one hand, through the 12th house, you can see fame. You can see individuals that can really awake public emotions. People that can move the collective. So people that can change history or can affect history in one way or another. And you can also have a person selling food in the Vancouver Quay market. Why? Because that person that has a fruit store downstairs is offering a public service. He doesn't choose who will come and buy his strawberries. It's all open to the public. There's no personal contact. And this is what happens with the 12th house. You know, I want to be an astrologer, and I want to do this and this and that, and I want to have, to develop this knowledge. And then I'm exposing myself to the public. And people come for readings, or people come to classes, and I say, I'm accepting everyone. I cannot discriminate who will open my store, who will open my shop, and who won't. And this can be overwhelming, because suddenly, you have these people entering your store, and they come with their own life and their own needs, and you have to adapt to the different needs. So through the 12th house, in that surrendering, in that acceptance of whoever will enter your store, without discrimination, this open door, there is a very, very strong requirement to adapt, to open up, to expose yourself, to be flexible. Again, you have to let go of control and feel that specific energy that is currently happening. So being open to the collective is in a way being open to diversity also, being open to all the surprises possible. You don't know who will enter your shop today, you cannot plan it. And if you don't have a power of adaptation, you're lost in your 12th house. You become easily overwhelmed. So there's a lot of fun with it, because through the 12th house, you can become successful. But think about the fact that you cannot control that success either. You have opened your store, and you don't know if people will enter that door or not. You don't know if you're going to go bankrupt or not. You have to address a public need. If you're selling strawberries in a place where there's no need for strawberries, people won't come in. So there's also a lot of adaptation in that respect, that you don't do everything that you want through the 12th house. You basically have to get into that stream and get on that wave, and wherever the wave will take you, that's where you're gonna end up. And it doesn't mean that you're lost at sea. You can navigate your boat, you can use the wind, you can choose whatever you will sell or not in your shop. But once you have declared your identity, once you have defined your ego now is at the mercy of that service and that exchange. And what I said is that on the one hand, you can enjoy that success, and on the other hand, that success can easily consume you, that exposure. Because through the 12th house, you become totally exposed in that specific phase. I mean, these clients enter your doors, and you have to open up, you have to adapt. And if you don't have, now that's another Neptunian word, if you don't have immunity, you easily become overwhelmed. And this is why you see the life of many famous people that usually have a very strong Neptune, not necessarily in the show business, but in every in every field that there is a very, very strong need for privacy, this fight for privacy, this fight to maintain their personal life private, because they're so exposed through that Neptunian energy. And it's like I'm a street and everybody's walking on it. And I can control it a little bit. I can, fix my open and closing hours. But it gets to a point where, that person fought with his wife yesterday, and he's now projecting on me all his agendas. So through the 12th house, you're exposed to the public in every way. You're exposed to the public's ideas, you're exposed to the public's emotion, and you're exposed to the public trash as well. And this is why you can, through the 12th house, be exposed to random violence, random invasion. It's not because you have bad karma. It's simply because you're overly exposed, point, and you don't have enough of an immunity. And this is why this house is the house where you can easily lose control in a very negative way. You can become paranoid because you don't have your defenses. Everybody's coming from everywhere. Your ego is simply feels unsafe. So again, please remember that when I talk about the 12th house, I also refer to Neptune, the placement, wherever it is, and to Pisces energy. Now, you will see, I'm using this projector to show you case examples, and you will see that most public figures have a very heavy 12th house and not a heavy 10th house. And you will have to explore these dynamics yourself, because now I'm just talking to you and I'm just expressing these ideas, but this is something you have to validate with your own experience. Now we will talk a little bit about all the planets and how they work with this kind of public exposure. So let's start with the Sun in the 12th house, the Sun in Pisces, Neptune in the 5th house, or Neptune, Sun aspects. When you have the Sun in any kind of correlation with the Pisces archetype, and you're in that phase of public exposure, chances are there are very, very pronounced leadership qualities. Because it means that the person's Sun, which is self-expression, creativity, the personal creativity will have an effect on the public. So this means that you can have a person whose personal life, personal persona, personal everything that relates to the Sun is mine, is the fruit of my inspiration, the fruit of the sum of who I am. And it's in the 12th house, which means whoever you are, whatever you represent, will inspire the large crowds. So you have definitely, with the Sun in the 12th house, you definitely have a potential for leadership qualities. So this can be in a minor scale. You can be the leader of, the Scouts. You can be a politician. You can be an artist. You can be, famous through show business. It doesn't matter exactly in what form, but whatever you are seems to interest the public. Now, before we go on, I want to say again that it doesn't mean that everybody that has a 12th house Sun will tap into this potential. because not everybody will be ready for that phase. Like I said in this talk, I'm focusing on this phase of expression. You will see many people with a 12th house sun that feel that they have something very, very unique to offer. They want a special destiny. But because they cannot control it, they can be lost until they find it. So there's something not totally ready to access this maximum potential of that phase. And this is a very important point. A person with a 12th house sun, the more they will try to be famous, the less they will succeed. You cannot control your success. You simply have to be. You simply have to have that integrity. You simply have to be creative and trust that the wave of the collective will knock on your door. It's like you opened your store, now you cannot impose fame. You cannot impose recognition. It has to come to you. And this is the 12th house dynamic, is the more you will try to impose it, the more you will lose grip on it. And you will actually experience the other thing, which is anonymity. But many people with a 12th house sun come from past life in which they remember that they had a larger than life function. And so they come into this life and they want to do it again. And the more they want to do it again, the less it happens. Until they let go, and it just takes its toll. It just be who you are, continue, your personal, individual work, and opportunities will come. Now, regardless of fame and leadership and being a politician, 12th house sun can also manifest in public work in regards to children. You can be a pediatrician with Leo in the 12th house. Or you can be a school teacher working with children. And you will see this happen a lot. So everything related to the work with kids, Sun, Leo. You can also have people involved in the medical field, because the Sun represents saving lives. So you're in the business of saving public lives, or the life of the public, of the collective. So being involved in this kind of institution, in this kind of hospitals, or being a family doctor, doesn't matter. Now, looking at a chart here. Where is that chart? I mean, I used that chart for the other lecture. This is Tony Blair. Everybody can see? So May 6, 1953. You see a sun in the 12th house, squaring the nodes, and you see Neptune, Saturn in the 5th house. So you clearly see here a double signature, both the Sun in the 12th and Neptune in the 5th. And that Neptune is also conjunct Saturn, which has to do with politics. So you really have someone here who has these leadership qualities and can lead a nation. Now, this is not the best example, because you can say, well, he has also this moon in Aquarius in the 10th house. So maybe it's coming from there. So I'm giving you another example. Da-da-dum. Where did he go? Here he is.
Say something about how that sun operating as a sixth that may indicate how how someone may still be in what's called hiding phase.
Well, the question is, in his case, in Tony Blair's case, the sun is squaring the nodes, and does that represent skip steps, and does this mean that he was in the hiding before, and that if he's recuperating? Not necessarily. Like I said, we have the tendency to think that the 12th house is about this hidden house where, you know, we don't have, we cannot express ourselves. And actually, it's the house in which we can have the fullest exposure, the largest exposure. So it's actually a house that is not about hiding at all. But it could take you to the hiding if many people that go through a 12th house experience can feel overexposed, and therefore they will want this anonymity to compensate for it. I mean, there are many dynamics around it, which I cannot get into now, because I have to focus on this, and we have limited time. But we have to grow beyond the classic association with the 12th house and see that it means much, much more than that. Now, this is the next fellow, George Bush. I mean, nothing in the 10th house, and the Sun and Saturn in the 12th house. And his Sun is also squaring Neptune. So many people saw this horoscope and say it's a mistake. He should be in an institution. Yeah, it's another kind of institution. But basically, the thing is that this person is tapping into the collective. And he was elected in a very obscured way. Nobody expected it. It's a very 12th house issue. You know, it's becoming a king without really planning it completely. I mean, he was also within his family. He was not the favorite. Like the older brother was the bright guy. And he was, you know, he had problem with alcohol and this. Nobody thought that he would be leading the world. And there it is, Sun in the 12th house. The wave just took him. And it doesn't matter if you like it or not. It just happened. And it's a triple signature here. It's the Sun in the 12th, it's squaring Neptune, and Saturn is there too. All political symbols. Now, interestingly, you know, the coming elections, he will have a Saturn return. So it will be very interesting to see how this will play, and to see if, basically, if he tries to control this situation too much, he will lose control. Yet, if nobody expects him to win, he will win again. Now, moving to Moon in the 12th house, or Neptune in the 4th, and so on, we have here individuals who have the capacity to tap into the most basic emotions of the collective. These are individuals who do not tap into the collective through their creative outlets, but through their emotional expression, which means people who can have this compassion for the collective. But you have to be very, very careful when you say that, because many 12th house Moon and Pisces Moon individuals are not compassionate at all. And one of the reasons is that they fear being victimized so much that they are excessively defensive, to a point where they are afraid, that they become very narrow-minded even. So, as it is with Neptune, there is either too much exposure or not enough. But if we talk about a public expression of the moon in the 12th house, these are people that can tap into the most, I would say, primitive emotions. It's the politician who will say, "It's for your children's future." Now, who cannot identify with such a slogan? So it can be very simplistic because it has to be accessible to everyone. So there's something that can be simplistic about this 12th house moon. Or it can be the artist that writes a song, "I love you and you love me," and everybody can relate to that and everybody's happy dancing to the tune. So there's something very basic about it. And there's something that everybody can identify with. And again, if we go back to Bush's chart, he has Cancer in the 12th house. And you see, like, he's the body of everyone. Everyone can tap into his inner child. You know, he has that quality which is very simple. He's not very sophisticated. And there's something convincing in that. There's something that is not threatening. So politicians need a good aspect with Moon Neptune. What I mean by good is any contact between Cancer and Pisces is the ability to provide security for the collective. Now, in other aspects, not necessarily again fame, you can have, like I said, a person that sells food to the collective, or a person that, a nurse, that is also has these nurturing qualities for the collective. You can have a person that owns an hotel and gives shelter to the public. See what I mean? So it's tapping into the Cancer energy, shelter, food, nurturing, security, and it's being able to provide these Cancerian energies, qualities, to everybody without discrimination. Going to Mercury. Mercury in the 12th house or Neptune in the 3rd house, obviously you have all the media. You have individuals who can be conduits of information to the public. They're the one who become the messengers. And again, without discrimination. So when you host the news and you're just saying what happens today and what happened yesterday in this or that place, it's a very Mercury in 12th house function. For example, I had a friend who has Mercury in Pisces in her natal chart, and Uranus just transited it. 0 Pisces. And suddenly, a journalist came up to her and did an interview about her work on astrology. So she was exposed through the media. So you're not just being the journalist, you can also be exposed yourself through the media with that transit or that natal position. And it's not necessarily being, the front speaker. You can also be a sound engineer. You can also be everything, that is technical. You can be behind the scenes in the media industry. You will also see many writers with Neptune in the 3rd house, many teachers. And very interestingly, individuals with Neptune in the 3rd house and Mercury can have a lot of problems with schooling and with communicating on an intimate level. And this is another 12th house thing, is that many things with the 12th house can be difficult on an intimate level and easier on a collective level. So the person can have a hard time communicating with his or her partner, but can communicate to the public. You can also have travel industry with Mercury in the 12th house. You know, people having a multicultural quality to it. So it's not necessarily a spiritual nature to that symbol. It's simply a public nature. And from there you can disseminate very basic knowledge, and you can disseminate very sophisticated knowledge. The nature of the knowledge is not defined in that symbol. Going to Venus in these aspects, very surprisingly, you will see a lot of people with banking business with Venus in the 12th house. And that's the craziest thing, because people with Neptune in the 2nd house or Venus in the 12th usually cannot handle a bank account. They are chronic spenders, and they have a hard time finding their boundaries with their own financial situation. But you will see many of them managing public funds, being involved with banking business, being involved with stock markets, being involved with all kinds of financial transactions and financial businesses. And again, it's a very, it works. You will see this. And this is another classic example of a guy that made it and is very money oriented. Donald Trump. Neptune in the 2nd house, Venus in the 12th. Again, a double signature. You see almost nothing in the 10th house except Uranus just on that border. And yet he's someone who is very public and someone who made it big. He has this huge career. Now, what is his career about? Except making money? It's Saturn in Cancer, real estate. Saturn in Cancer in the 12th house. More?
Maybe you can point to the screen rather than the overhead so that the camera can catch you in the pictures.
I'm confused. So, this is this. Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ah, you got it.
So basically what I'm seeing in this chart is a person with Neptune in the 2nd house is not only someone that can manage public fund, it can be your bank teller, it's also someone that has the capacity, karmically speaking, has the potential to access public funds, in a way also attract public funds. People with Neptune in the 2nd house can become multi-millionaires because of that, because they tap into the collective consciousness through the financial avenue. And therefore, they can have this open door where just, money just comes in without control. How fun is that? And it can happen the other way around, where money can just, lose. They can lose tremendous amounts of money without control. And this is a very tricky lesson with Neptune in the 2nd house. When you try to own, to control too much, it doesn't work. You lose it. And you will see people with Neptune in the 2nd house who can be very extravagant, financially speaking, have no boundaries whatsoever. They don't know why people invented such a thing as money. And you will see people who are very, very calculated. They will be so afraid of being cheated financially that they can become extremely narrow in ways of spending. And obviously both extremes lead to crisis. If you don't respect money, you're going to have that crisis. And if you fear it, you're going to have a crisis too. So Neptune in the second house, it's really about having, being again that conduit. Not trying to be a millionaire at all cost, and it will come. Just flow with it.
How do you feel about those first few degrees above the ascendant, a so-called vocation sector?
Once again, I couldn't hear you.
Vocation sectors, the first few degrees above the ascendant. How do you feel about those degrees?
I don't know. I don't have an opinion.
There's some research for you.
I will. It's just that, I mean, you're talking about specific degrees?
I'm looking at that Pluto, which is there in the 12th house, which
Okay.
is a Gokulan sector, which, Gokulan tried to prove that astrology didn't work, and ended up proving that it does work as planets above the ascendant, like Mars above the ascendant and athletes was where he started.
Yeah. Well, I see that everything in the 12th house, not necessarily conjunct the ascendant, can have that aspect. And obviously somebody with Pluto in the 12th house has a lot of issue with power also. So you can have a person that can become extremely powerful, extremely influential. And you can also have individuals that become paranoid with Pluto in the 12th house, because they feel the hostility of Pluto merged with the lack of boundary that is emphasized in the 12th house. It's a fear of being attacked by everybody. And we will get to the Scorpio part, and you will understand that, because many people with Pluto in the 12th house can go through experiences of harassment and negativity that way. So
Trump was something like $1 trillion in debt at some point.
what?
Trump was something like about $1 trillion in debt. That's an exaggeration. Major losses and major
Yeah, yeah. And all over the chart you can see this. I mean, this 12th house, the Pluto in the 12th, the Neptune in the second, all these signatures about when you try to control too much, you lose it. It's like not in your possession. You don't own it. And then you're successful if you don't try to own it.
All right, the retrograde Neptune, does that have an influence?
Not specifically. I mean, retrograde Neptune has its particular quality, but not in regards to exposure or not exposure. Now, moving to Venus again, I expressed the Taurian aspect of it. There's also a sexual aspect to Venus. And yes, it can lead to sexual exposure. Now, what does that mean? It can lead to prostitution. It can lead to sexual therapists. It can lead to sexologists, I mean doctors that deal with that aspect of the body, of the anatomy. And from the Libra side, you will see Venus in the 12th house, also mediators, diplomats, being able to harmonize on a collective level. Neptune in the 7th house, in that context, you will also see many people managing other people. Or, why do I say that? Because the 7th house is about the other. So they can be, on the one hand, the best counselors, knowing how to attain that balance and to touch the public in that way. But they could also be individuals that manage the career of someone else. For example, Lois Rodden has Neptune in the 7th house. And she's writing all the biographies of everybody's that exist on this earth. So she's basically giving a public service through the channel of other people. Mars, the Mars function is very interesting You have many attributes to it. You will see a classic expression of Mars in the 12th house or Neptune in the first is artists. Very, very pronounced artistic qualities. And it's not just being the artist, it's being an artist that has a potential of public exposure. And it can happen through all the channels, music, paintings, doesn't matter. You will see also the freedom fighters. Individuals that are on the front field for the collective. And the most interesting dynamic about Mars in the 12th house is that they cannot fight for themselves, but they can fight for a larger cause. It's again, they can be soldiers for something big, for the nation. They can be generals in the army. Napoleon had Neptune conjunct Mars. So he was this big warrior. But it's not just warrior, it's also freedom fighter, it's also liberators. It's very idealistic people. On the negative side, Mars in the 12th house can also lead to public killing. An individual that become what's the word?
A suicide bomber?
A suicide bomber or
Mass murder?
mass murderer, that's the word. Mass, 12th house, murderer, Mars. And so you have the positive and the negative aspects of it. In another way, you will see also Mars in the 12th house, interestingly, sex symbols. What does that mean? It doesn't mean necessarily sexuality, being sexual with everybody, which can also happen, but it's sex symbol in the fact that these people can embody physically something that raises public identification. And this is why they also can have place in the show business industry, being models and all that stuff. So whose example? I think I have an example here. Yeah, this lady here, Bo Derek. Mars in Pisces in the 12th house. So she's not the best actress and everything, but she's a sex symbol. Bo Derek. How do you pronounce it? Bo Derek. So Mars in Pisces in the 12th house. Okay? And Venus, Neptune adds to it also, obviously. Now, like I said, Mars also in the 12th house can, similar to Venus in the 12th house, lead to prostitution. Because it is also indiscriminate sexuality. Another example I had here, what a mess. Well, I will find it later. But you can definitely have the prostitution also with Mars in the 12th. Jupiter in the 12th house, you will see popes. Popes. You can become a pope. And you see the Pope has Jupiter conjunct Neptune. I mean, according to different theory, some say it's in the 12th house and so on, but not necessarily. But what I mean is that there could be a spiritual or religious nature that is expressed in a collective level. So being a priest or a rabbi or a Buddhist monk or whatever. Obviously, it's not just about faith, but it's also about knowledge. Jupiter in 12th house can be teachers. You can also have the multicultural nature to it. So have international businesses or individuals that that can have any kind of job that relates, for example, working with new immigrants, working with the races. Saturn in the 12th house, or Neptune in the 10th, as we've explored already, you will see politicians. You will see, it's like without fail, 90% of politicians have either Neptune in the 10th house, Saturn in the 12th, or Neptune in the 5th and Sun in the 12th. Either that Neptune Capricorn or that Neptune Leo combo. It just works time after time. We saw this with Bush, that has both Saturn and the Sun. Kennedy has Neptune in the 10th. John Kerry has Neptune in the 10th. Jacques Chirac has Saturn in the 12th. It's all over the place. Saturn can also have, everything that relates to legislation. It can be judges, everything that has to do with public authority, leading, also leadership qualities. So you will also have the teacher type with Saturn in the 12th house. Yeah.
What about police?
Definitely. Police, you will see a combination. It can either be Saturn in the 12th, Mars in the 12th, or Pluto in the 12th. It depends exactly the function. I mean, if they are regulating traffic, or if they're dealing with crime, but it can tap into all these threes, and usually it's a combination of all three, like Saturn in Scorpio in the 12th house, for example. With Uranus in the 12th house, you have everything that you can be electricians. All the Aquarian qualities that are expressed publicly. You will have also, similar to the Mercury equation, all the media, reporters, journalists, or presenters. It's a huge thing. And you will see, for example, all the channels of communication. Think about the fact that we have now a very extended transit of Uranus and Neptune. We had Uranus conjunct Neptune in Capricorn in the late 80s and in the course of the 90s. Then Neptune moved into Aquarius. Now Uranus moves into Pisces. So we have, like for 20 years, a combination of Neptune and Uranus in one way or another. And when did the internet become public resource? The internet was invented before 20 years, but it became, it was introduced in the public, in every home, during this conjunction between Uranus and Neptune. So you will have every, software businesses, internet businesses, and so on. Going further with Uranus, you will also have the inventors and the scientists. And regardless of public exposure, Uranus in the 12th house has huge issues to unite science and religion. It's like one of their main requests, evolutionary speaking. Neptune in the 12th house. they can sell drugs to the public and sell alcohol and own a vineyard. So basically, Neptune in the 12th house actually has to do with natural resources, with the raw and the untamed. So you will see Neptune in the 12th house individuals, many of them having some kind of vocation with nature or with geology, exploring all kind of natural resources, which can be gas exploitation, oil, gold, all the unrefined, all the primal. You will also see, interestingly, Neptune in the 12th house, the tourism industry. Why is that? Because it's allowing people to get out of life for 2 weeks. So offering an escape, offering paradise to the public. And I've seen that quite a lot, Neptune in the 12th house involved in the tourism industry. Art? Not necessarily. Art, you will see more the Sun or Mars in these combinations. Moon in Aries opposing Neptune. With Pluto in the 12th house, you will see everything relating to defense on a public level. So it can similar to Mars, it can work on the defense front, being a soldier, being a policeman, being a general in the army. Schwarzkopf has Pluto in the 12th house, defending the enemy. You can also have individuals that deal with everything that relates to crime, either investigators, or they can be the criminals too. They can become a public threat. You see what I mean? You will also see all aspects of power. For example, Madonna has Pluto in the 12th house. And there's something about her being a public figure, also packed 12th house, that she symbolizes power and regeneration. I mean, whether you like her or not, there's something about her that can inspire in that way. She's a survivor. She's creative, but she's having this powerful aspect, influence on the public. We don't have so much time for questions. And on another level, you can also have the sexual issues with Pluto in the 12th house, or Neptune in the 8th. And here's the example that I wanted to use. This is an individual with Neptune in the 8th house, Mars in Pisces, and he's a male prostitute involved with Congressman Barney Frank, whoever that is. So you see here a double signature, both the Mars in Pisces opposing that 7th house and that Neptune in the 8th house squaring Venus, that led to the promiscuity, to the lack of boundary. And this is one aspect of it. Okay. And I have here another example of Neptune in the 8th house. This is an Italian policeman involved with crime. And so on and so forth. So we don't have too much time to go on. I hope this gave you food for thought and that it opened a door for further research. Thank you and have a nice day.